Hello, I'm Alma Schneider. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and the proud mother of 4 children, one of whom has Prader-Willi syndrome.
And I am Iris Miller. I'm a certified rehabilitation counselor and the proud mother of 2 children, one of whom has quadriplegic cerebral palsy and is nonverbal.
In this podcast, we discuss the uncensored truth about raising children with disabilities.
Prepare to laugh, cry, and hopefully learn something new.
This is Two Moms, No Fluff. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Two Moms, No Fluff, the uncensored truth of raising children with disabilities. We are so happy you're here. Welcome to newcomers and welcome back to the veterans of our listeners. Iris, would you like to tell everyone who we have today on our podcast?
Yes. Obviously, we have Alma Schneider, my partner here, and I'm Iris Miller. And we have a very special guest here today, someone that I'm so happy and proud to host on our podcast. Her name is Marcy Post, but I would let her introduce herself. Marcy, I should have said Marcella, maybe.
No, Marcy's fine. Marcella is when I
Excellent.
used to get in trouble as a kid.
So thank you so very much for taking the time of your extremely busy day to join us today and share your knowledge, experience, and information with other parents. And if you don't mind, please introduce yourself so our listeners can get to know you.
Absolutely. So I'm Marcy Post. My official title is the Assistant Director of Public Services for the city, which essentially there's kind of 2 things that I do there, but everybody knows me right now in this capacity as being like the league director of the Miracle Field. So I've been with the city's Parks Department for 15 plus years. And before I was here in Midland, I started the Parks and Recreation Department in Little Clare, Michigan. And then before that, I was with the city of Livonia for a few years doing managing a small park staff, and we had just built a big community center. So my whole career has been in municipal parks and recreation. I did a little bit for the DNR in college. I worked at a national park in college. So I've always been parks focused. Both my undergrad and my master's degrees are both in Parks and Recreation Administration. If you didn't know that was a major, you do now. So fire up chips. But I live here in Midland with my family. I've got 2 boys, one 14 and one 4. And we are avid campers when mom can get away. In the summertime here in the city, I run, in addition to the Miracle Field, basically any outdoor recreation that's not covered by the community center. So Plymouth Pool, which we'll see likely 40 to 50,000 visitors this year. A variety of special events and programs. So Tunes by the Church Summer Concert Series, the LEAP program, which is a program for adults who have disabilities, or recreation program, and just kind of these one-offs, pitch it and run, fishing day at Stratford. So very busy in the summer, but when I'm not busy, I'm camping with my family. I also found running after my first was born, and I'm an athlete, so I run a lot. I run these crazy 200-mile road races with girlfriends, and I'm actually headed this weekend to run a half marathon. So this is where I find I can get some stress out in those spaces. So I do a lot of that, and I still play women's basketball. So I'm championships this weekend. So wish me luck.
Wow, you must be in amazing shape.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Sounds like it. Well, good for you.
Thank you.
Before I ask my official question, I just need to ask if you feel a special affinity toward Amy Poehler in Parks and Rec.
I am Leslie Knope. And so everything around me is Leslie Knope in my office. So you'll have to come see it sometime. But I actually, this is funny. I have 10 other girlfriends who do my job in other cities around the state, Farmington Hills, the city of Lansing, Canton, all over. And so we have a small, very informal group we call the Sisters of Pawnee. We have a chat group, and we have an Amazon storefront because we have these same products that we love, but we meet 2 to 3 times a year on weekends. We celebrate Galentine's Day on February 13th. So it's and I think waffle tattoos are likely in my future. So it's real. It's all real.
You guys, you have to take a pause and explain to other listeners who have no clue what you're talking about, what it is all about.
Yeah. So the show Parks and Recreation that came out on NBC in 2003, that's almost a spinoff of The Office. But the question I get, that's how I introduce myself in a lot of groups. And then it just totally breaks the silence. And like, oh, okay, like you're the girl from Parks and Rec. And so minus the many binders, but it's a great, and the question I get asked the most is how much alike is it? And I laugh and I say it's very much different, but there are days when I feel like I'm going to forget the Easter eggs at the Easter egg hunt. Like that's where I'm at. So
Yeah, you do a little of everything. So my question is about disability, since we are in a disability podcast. What is your connection, if any, to the disability community?
So it's deep. It's super deep. So in 2017, my husband and I found out that we were pregnant with our second, and we weren't actively trying, but here he came all of a sudden. Terrible pregnancy, and at 36 weeks, and I was geriatric maternal age, which is the 3 words that you never want to hear from your OB. But went in for my 36-week appointment and said, he said, you're going to have this baby this weekend. Something's not quite right here. And we found out that there was some fluid on my guy's lungs. And so he handed me a one-way ticket to Ann Arbor. Do not go home, go straight there. So Ann Arbor was waiting for us. And Julian, we are a big Beatles family. So Hey Jude. And so Julian is our connection there. Julian was born a few days later, and on April 24th, and so on March 24th. And so 2 days after that, we knew something was wrong. They kind of watched him. So the NICU was ready in the nest for him, and they put they got his lungs cleared from the fluid, but they had done an amniocentesis. So long story short, we got a birthday diagnosis that my son was born with Down syndrome. But at that point, we didn't know what was happening, but there was something else that was wrong. So they studied him. So I lived in Ann Arbor for 3 months at the Ronald McDonald House while my husband commuted back and forth. The girls, the nurses who are still friends of our family, joked that I was the mayor because I was literally there so much. I mean, I was there at 8 a.m. and I didn't leave until 10. And so they watched Julian very closely, and he had something called congenital lymphatic dysplasia, which is very rare, but essentially his body didn't have a lymph system, which explains why my pregnancy was so terrible in that regard, because I really feel like I was probably carrying his fluids for him. There's a picture of me, and I saw it and I thought, wow, okay, I see that now. But so Julian, he was on ECMO, that saved him at one point. So there were a few times we almost lost him, but eventually his body said no about 3 months after he was born. So he passed away on June 5th, 2018. But it just kind of, we had gotten, we had done an MFM scan, and I didn't hear the doctor or get the cues from the doctor when he said, you've got a bright spot on the heart and those sorts of things. And not that it mattered, because we were going to roll with it, but that's where the miracle field comes in. Is while we were in the hospital, a friend said to me, you got to see this video. It's my nephew playing miracle field baseball. He's got Down syndrome. He lives in Cincinnati. And, we had talked about the miracle field, but so that just kind of tied it all together. But it was really traumatic. There were some really scary nights and some really scary days, but it was a beautiful experience, if I had to say that. Like, I don't know how else to say that. Traumatic for our family at that time. My oldest was 9, so it was a lot of travel. I only came home from Ann Arbor one time, but it was a lot for us. And so for a very long time, we did a lot of therapy and a lot of counseling, having lost a child, but also having the Down syndrome component. Like overnight, I was reading books, like, why did this happen to me, and how did this happen, and what do I do next? And then the Medicare and the medical piece of it still is I still am overwhelmed at thinking about that. So that's my connection. So I had a son born with Down syndrome but and then we did end up having a rainbow baby after that. So Callan Jude, who was named after his brother, he's 4 now. So I did have 3. I'm a mother of 3 boys. And my oldest reminds me of that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. That's thank you for sharing that. That's
Thank you.
it's going to help a lot of people to
Yeah.
hear that they're not alone with
Yeah,
that.
it's tough. And when you start looking at some of the research, or, you listen to the blogs and things, like these other parents who say, what did I do wrong in order to have this happen? I'm this athletic mother, who, yeah, I was older, but it's so interesting. Like, until you're put in that position, you don't realize, like, but and it was funny. A friend of mine who's she's a PA, or was a PA. She knew before I did, because she saw a picture of his hand and he had the crease, and
Yeah.
okay, it was beautiful. His life was beautiful, and the nurses at Mott, he was on a respirator, an event, but they did everything that they could to let me hold him every night. And so after everybody went home, I'd stay late until midnight, I'd have to go to the bathroom, you change, and I get down skin to skin as much as possible. So some nurses were better than others, but they let me have that time with him. So I will forever be a Michigan fan after that experience. So
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
yeah,
It is.
so it's a crazy story, but
But it
yeah,
endeared
we're
you to the
blessed.
disability community, sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I got home, I tell you what, the first call I got was Kim White, and I didn't know Kim at the time. And we were the Down syndrome community just pulled us in and gave us a big hug. And so, and it's been amazing. It's been absolutely
Who's
amazing.
Kim White? Who's Kim?
Her son works for us. Her son has Down syndrome. He's 25, and just an advocate in the community.
Mhm.
So
Marcy, that's like a deep, deep and hard to tell and hard to listen to story. But
yeah,
thank you again very much for sharing it. And I want to tell you that it's just every story like that someone shares. There is a mother out there that needs to hear it and that is touched. So I really appreciate you kind of being
thank you.
open about it and disclosing so much. You touched on it a tiny bit during this story about the connection to the Miracle League.
Yeah,
Can you expand a little bit about how
yeah.
this came full force back into your life? And
Yeah. So, we had talked about the miracle field a couple of times, or having a miracle field, or some sort of an accessible surface. And so again, while I was in the hospital, my girlfriend was showing me pictures of Charlie, or videos of him playing. And I looked at those videos and I thought, and so I called my boss, Karen, she's my biggest supporter. And I said, I want to build this. Like, we have to build this. What respectable recreation director doesn't have a place for their child to play baseball? Because at that point, I knew that I was going to have to quit my job to care for Julian, because he would have been on a trach and on a vent and in a wheelchair, likely, because had he survived, his body, it was pretty wrecked from all of the implements that they use. So I knew that that's where we were going to be. So I came home, and Karen looked at me and said, "Are you ready to build the field?" And I said, "Yes."
Wow.
And so we started in September, and I started going to other fields. I went to Southfield, who was the second miracle field in the country at the time, or at least that's what he told me. And the thing I realized talking to him, his name is Steve Peck. He's a radio broadcaster, and he said, "This isn't just for those kids. This is for those parents too." And it's crazy. Picture day in our world is insane, because so many of these parents don't know how to conduct a proper picture day, which is so basic for anybody who's got kids in t-ball or little league. So it's a beautiful, chaotic mess, and I love every minute of it. And I'm so blessed to be able to give these parents the experience that is, picture day. But it goes back to these, it gives parents the opportunity to sit in the stands and be a fan, and let their kid be a kid, and they can watch, and have that experience too. And that was huge. But we went to Southfield, we went to Plymouth. I've been to West Michigan, South Michigan, Bridgeport. So we did the tour to see what their best practices were. And a good friend of mine runs a foundation here in town, and we went to see her and said, do you think that this is going to work, or is it going to happen? Can we make it happen? And they said, yes, we're going to commit some funding to you, and the rest is history. So yes, it's definitely, and it's for, it was for Julian. For me, that was my special, I don't want to call it a grief project, but it really was a way for me to remember him. Also for my son to have like this, I don't know, I don't say memorial, but like this place to know that mom did this for my brother.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So,
beautiful.
yeah.
It's beautiful. Can you describe a little bit about how it works? So
Yeah.
it's an accessible floor. If you could explain a little bit about what
Yeah.
that means and
So
how do you play?
yeah, absolutely. So it's a baseball diamond that's made out of rubber, but there are no barriers to play. So the gates are big enough for anybody to get through. There are no coverings on the dugout so that wheelchairs can zip in and out. All my kids who are in wheelchairs or who have walkers, they can go anywhere on the field. If you think about a sandlot league or a sandlot field, you've got dirt base paths that are rutted out, that are uneven, that are unsafe. So in a miracle field, the surface is it's crowned underneath the actual rubber surface, so it drains beautifully. So on opening day this year, when every other field in the city was not playable, we were, because the water comes right off, and that's how it's designed to do. And that's the biggest, most expensive component of a miracle field. But also the rubber surface itself, the base paths are actually just a different color rubber. So there's no bases that stick up off the field. There's nothing that the kids will get caught up on if they're in a walker, in a wheelchair. And if they do fall, which they do, we all do, quite frankly, it's not really soft, but it's not falling on concrete or asphalt, right? So so it's a baseball field, but I feel like it's already so much more. In Miracle Field, that is created was specifically for baseball. So we do a spring league and we do a fall league. Spring is all the bells and whistles. It's jerseys, hats, picture day, concessions, 6 weeks of play on Saturdays, and it's just the whole pomp and circumstance of baseball. I have an announcer who is, I literally got an email today from a parent who wants to send him a gift to thank him, because the most important thing is to make these kids feel like they are the single greatest thing on earth in that moment. So they get a walk-up song, so whether it's like a Beastie Boys song, or it's Blippi, I'm an excavator, these kids are getting to walk up to their songs. They know that that's their song. They have
Oh,
nicknames. So it's a whole production, right? I mean, it's phenomenal. So that's spring, and then fall is a little bit more Sandlot-esque. So real quiet, real gentle, 4 weeks, usually the 4 weeks after Labor Day, because we compete with football on Saturdays, and all the soccer and all the things as well too. But a little bit more relaxed. We'll get jerseys, but not the hats, not the pictures, not any of that kind of stuff. But then last year we started a competitive unified wiffle ball league. So I have some adults who have some disabilities who they don't want to play in a recreational league. So in Miracle Field, everybody hits, everybody runs or rolls, and everybody scores every time. So at the end, there is no score. I mean, we don't keep score. There's no scoreboard. But I've got a group of gentlemen who don't want to play with, they want to play competitively, but they can't go to Emerson Park on a Tuesday night and play men's fast pitch. It's just not safe for them, right? So so we came up with a unified league, which is something we're seeing more and more of. So we had 20 people, we had 2 teams of 10, and for 4 nights in the summer last year we went out and played wiffle ball, and it was hilarious because there was a bit of trash talking going on, and there and they were sliding. They wanted to slide, which I said you can't slide on this rubber, but it was competitive and it was fun, and they got to keep score, and we had a referee. So so we're doing that, but then I'm also going to try kickball for the kids this summer too. So it's not just baseball, it's all things, just to get them out and try new things, because what I realize is that parents who try, they never thought that their kid could play baseball, or their adult. My oldest athlete is 71. I mean,
wow.
yeah, I mean, that's what's incredible. My youngest is 3 this year. My oldest is 71. So
That's great.
I can't turn anybody away, but,
Yes.
but we're doing a lot of things out there, and it's because parents they're getting the confidence to say, wait, what else can we do?
Yes.
And that is what I love the most about that.
Yeah, you're serving as a model for
Yeah,
everyone. Wow, you put your mind to something, you gather people, you
yeah,
get it done.
yeah. And it's, I can't see that field not being used. I mean, it was expensive.
Yeah.
Let's use it. Let's get people out there. And we
Yeah.
do have a ton of use. The Little League is using it for their T-ball program on Thursday
Yeah.
nights, which is great. They can't use hard balls, they can't use baseballs because they do bounce, and that's a little scary. But the ESA is using the fields, Midland Public Schools is using the fields, and we're happy to let anybody use it, for their programs, so for kids who have disabilities and not truly.
That's great.
Yeah. So, Alma, did you have a question? Sorry, I'm just jumping
Oh,
in.
no, you go for it.
I just wanted to know, Marcy, like, how was the response from the community? I know that you're busy recruiting volunteers to help every summer, and just wanted to know what was the reflection back when the Miracle Field came to our community.
Yeah, I still think not enough people know about it. But the people that do know about it understand how amazing it is. And when I get somebody who's never seen it and they come out, and usually they'll come out because they're coming with somebody else, they'll stop me and say, This is amazing." You don't understand what you're looking at until you see, like one of our little athletes, she can't seem to figure out how to run the bases the right way. And that is amazing. Like, you go, girl. If it means you go to third base first, I'm all for it, right? And so when they see this and they see how excited the kids are, and how it all works, they're like, "Oh, this is great." And for me, it's when I see those volunteers come back after that first time. I've got a couple of boys, in and I almost have a high schooler here in about 2 weeks. But when you see those high school boys come back and their moms say, I didn't prompt this. Like, they had to come this first time for their team, because I do have a lot of teams that come in. But I have one kid in particular in my head. He has been back every week because he finds so much joy in volunteering, and just being with all of our participants and all of our athletes. So
Great.
we've got more work to do. I'm on the circuit for telling everybody about Miracle Field, which is awesome, but just getting people out there has been amazing.
And do you have, you mentioned that other teams can use this field. Is there any potential problem with having a typical team use the field, or is it just
No, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's a community field.
I
As
mean,
long as they're,
like
what's that?
damaging the flooring? Is
Yeah,
that
yep.
an issue?
No, no, as long as there's no cleats, we have a strict set of rules on what they can and can't do. No sunflower seeds, no bubble gum, no cleats.
Hmm.
Especially for like the little guys, the T-ball, the coach pitch, I'm not worried about that.
Hmm.
I do have some friends that like to jump the fence. Our trash cans seem to be the perfect launching pad up and over the dugouts. But that just tells me that kids want to use it, which,
Yeah.
I can't, I have to keep it locked. We've heard some horror stories about people tailgating and putting
Oh,
hot grills on the surface, and not
oh,
realizing, like, okay, this is rubber, it could melt. So
yeah.
we're cautious about it, and we're going to get some cameras. We've had a little bit of vandalism we're kind of keeping an eye on. But my neighbors are pretty passionate about the Miracle Field too. In fact, my announcer is a neighbor, so he's got his eye on that place. But
Good. It's always good to have some little spies all around.
yeah,
Um, yeah, and I know how expensive that flooring is, because in Montclair, New Jersey, where I live, we had an accessible playground put in, and that was what the most of the fundraising went toward, was the
absolutely.
flooring. Very pricey. Um, it sounds like a lot of these volunteers, I mean, we consider all of that stuff social, activism, disability activism. What are some other ways that you see parents becoming activists around this issue, or just parents of kids with disabilities becoming activists for their kids?
They're starting to speak up a little bit more. And I am new, and I'll be the first one to tell you, I know nothing about. The more I learn, the less I know. Meeting Iris for the first time, I'll never forget that moment. When we were talking about putting a lift in the Miracle Field, and I thought, well, what do I need that for? Oh, holy cow. I see it all now, right? But like, I know so little. And so, and that's the first thing I say to parents in my parent meeting. I say, I do not know. So if I am wrong, please correct me. If I've said, I try to use people first language. And it's a lot. And so if you need to correct me, please do. So they're speaking up for things. And so I've got parents who want to join I don't have a board. I've got a small sounding committee, for things like, what do I do about this? Or what do I do about this? Or do I let a 3-year-old in? So, they want to join these committees, but I see them getting more active and pushing for more, which I love. A friend of mine whose son plays in the league is pushing for her son to play a musical instrument in the schools. And originally, he was told that wouldn't be a good fit. But now she's seeing what he can do on the baseball field, right? And so she's saying, okay, yeah, we're gonna push for this, and we're gonna try to make this happen. So I'm excited to see what these parents are going to do more of, to know that they can ask for these things.
Yes.
And then it's going to be a welcome ask. I think that that's a big piece of that. Like, when Iris came to us and said, we need to get a lift in, we both, my boss and I both shook our heads and we're like, okay, like, oh, okay, like, let's try this. And now look where we're at. I mean, we're about to put in a changing place bathroom in one of our parks. We've got a lift, we've got a Hoyer lift at the Miracle Fields. I mean, that took no time at all. So these are easy asks, that make a world of difference.
Isn't Iris amazing? We
She
know
really
you're
is.
amazing.
How
Isn't
she
Iris?
How
really
did the
is.
conversation shift to me? I do not know. Back to you, Marcy.
Oh my God. Oh my
I
God.
wanted to ask you, how did your personal story beyond the Miracle League and the Miracle Field, how did your personal story affect you professionally?
I would say it, I grew up, and I think which sounds funny, right? I lost my mom when I was very young, when I was in my 20s. And that I really struggled with that for a long time. But I think, and I've grown up in the role that I'm in, which, good or bad, is the truth. I've been here for 15 years. So, but I think what it showed me is how strong I really was. And I think everybody handles grief differently. And I'm good at grief. And I know that sounds crazy, but I think I'm good at this. And so I was able to take what I think may have killed some other people, right? I mean, the loss of a child and all of this, I feel strong enough to be able to say, like, I took this and I turned it around and we use that for good, right? And there are days that I break down and I sit at the field and it's my place. But this experience professionally showed me that this is all great, but this isn't what really matters. This whole, when somebody's calling and they're mad because their park shelter was double booked, not that ever happens, but these small things, I say to my staff now, we're not saving babies today. It's parks. Like, I'm sorry that the grass in your park is not mowed. I mean, these are small potatoes compared to the women who are, on life flight right now, going to get a baby who's very ill, so it's put everything into perspective. Our new family motto is every day is a gift. And so when I start to get stressed about work or about, the pool staff not showing up, whatever it is that's happening on that day, it all goes back to this is nothing compared to where we could be right now, so it's helped me grow up, but also realize how strong I am. And after, I was promoted to a new role a couple of years ago, and it, like, after Julian had passed, and I thought, this has prepared me for all of those things, right? Like, makes you just realize that, none of this really matters. What really matters is your family and these things that, to be grateful for.
It's true. It's true. And, hopefully we're seeing changes with how people view people with disabilities. But what has been your experience since you've been doing the Miracle Field, about how people are viewing? Do you see a change in how people are viewing people with disabilities, what their capabilities are, whereas they might have thought they were limited in these ways, they're realizing, wow, they're really not? Have you seen that change? Have you felt that change?
Absolutely. And, there are some kids. So we let kids that are as young as 13 out of the field and to be volunteers or be volunteer buddies with us. And there are some kiddos who are very nervous, and rightfully so. It's for some of our participants, or some of our athletes have some pretty severe disabilities. So you see them warm up. So I had a kiddo, and I have one in my head in particular who really struggled. And I said, that's okay. You don't have to be a buddy today. Why don't you be my umpire?
Hmm.
Stand behind the plate, help me get the tee off the base if somebody's not using it, because we use all sorts of adaptive equipment from tees to beeper boxes to a machine that one of my staff created that actually has a clay shooter in it that so somebody who can't hold the bat, you pull the trigger and the bat swings for them. It's almost like a switch device. And so we allow these kids especially to warm up, because they've got to get acquainted, because in so many levels, especially if they're athletes and they're busy, they don't have that daily experience of working with somebody with a disability. They're not around that person, right? And so when you see them in their element, a lot of times you've got to let them warm up and get and kind of watch and see how that works. By the end of that game, that kid was a buddy to one of my adults. And he had a blast, right? Because at that point he was rolling her as fast as he could down from first base to second base, and it was awesome. And so you see them working together, and then that to me becomes so unified, because it's just awareness from one side to the other, and then it just makes this whole group just this beautiful menagerie of crazy. It's all crazy, right? Like,
Hmm.
kids throwing the bat one way, and but yeah, circling back, you can see people understanding how much people with disabilities can do physically, and if they can't, what we can do to adapt what we have to make it okay to
Yeah.
do it just a little bit differently. So yeah, you're hitting a red rubber ball off of a giant tee that's sitting on a laundry basket. Sure, let's go. Like it's not a baseball. It's okay.
Right. That's great. And that is so important for kids to be able to get comfortable, because if you're not around something, you're not going to be comfortable. And that's why inclusion in schools is so important. So everybody's together,
Yeah.
going through these stages and phases together so that it's not so odd or scary or unfamiliar.
Right. And it goes back to like when we were kids, we would find the most crazy things to be the bat and be the balls. We made it happen and we made it work.
Oh,
And that's exactly what we're doing on the Miracle Field front, right?
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
however we can make it so that somebody's hitting a ball with a long stick
Yeah.
is how it's going to work.
As simple as that. It's as
Yeah.
simple as that.
It's so simple.
Yeah.
Marcy, sorry, we have you here because you single-handedly created an amazing change in our community with this basically one project, the Miracle Field, and that's the ripple effect of that thing on so many families, both the families whose a family member participates in the league and those families whose family member is volunteering and supporting the project in one way or another. This is such a game changer, pun
Nice.
intended, yeah, for everybody. That I want to ask you, what is your advice for other parents that want to create change in their communities? Parents of children with disabilities many times, see the need firsthand because their child is personally affected. How do you recommend to other parents to create change like you did?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's starting small. I mean, nobody or not many people have access to this beautiful surface like we do, but you could easily replicate this on even an old baseball, not a baseball, but a basketball court, or start some sort of small program. It doesn't have to be baseball. It could be soccer. I mean, we have a really great soccer program in Midland. But if you offer parents up the opportunity to meet with other parents, and that's one thing I realized too, is what we're lacking as parents start to meet each other and then they see the commonalities. And that's what the Miracle Field has done for us, is to create a community of parents who never would have met otherwise. But I think it's starting small. I mean, and just finding a couple of key players in your community who are advocates, because you need that voice, whether it's an Iris or it's a Kim White, to push and say, this is really necessary. And yes, it doesn't, it's not a ton of kids, but it's going to start small and then it's going to start to grow. I mean, I really wish that I wish I could put together a whole therapeutic recreation program at this point, because now we're seeing the real need for it, right? Because now we've got kids that are coming out of the woodwork that we never saw before. Many
Yeah.
homeschool kids too,
Mm.
we've realized. But I think my advice would be to, if you have a community center, to start, a support group, and to start pulling people together, and start, maybe if it's recreational sports you're looking at, that's easy. Like, to start small and start doing some of these things, and then build from there.
Yeah. And
I don't know if
you're
that answers
seeing,
your question.
I think so. When you bring people together, amazing things happen. It's as simple as that. And you're talking about, you're realizing the great need for these programs. You have also witnessed the great benefits that it
Mhm.
can provide. So that's
Right.
that's so huge. So I have a question for you. My last question is, if there was one thing that you could change about society regarding disability, what would it be?
I I think we've got to be I think we've got to be inclusive. I see so many kids. I've talked so much, we talked a lot about Julian, and how we would go to school and what that would look like. And so we don't see these kids enough in our community, right? I mean, they need to be, and it's hard. I mean, some of our kids are, they need a lot of assistance, and they need a lot of accommodation.
Mhm.
But we need to be able to offer those things so that these parents and these families can get out of the house and come downtown, and be able just to be side by side with us. When we got home from the hospital, I found a family. He plays in the Miracle Field, who has well, the son has Down syndrome, and he's not far off my son. And I said, I need to have a play date, and I just want my son to learn more about Down syndrome and what it would have been like to have a brother who has Down syndrome. And he met Josh, and Josh is the light of my life every Saturday when he comes to the Miracle Field, because he gives the best hugs. But I want to see more of Josh, and I want to see all of the people in our community in all of these spaces, not just at the Miracle Field. I love having them there, and when they come, they are safe, and this is their space, and this is their community, and these are their people. And we all know each other now, which sounds really crazy considering I have 80 athletes. But it's just, we're starting to make those connections, and create that community. But I would love to see us more integrated than we are now. But I think that comes with facility piece. Like, how do we provide, you know, bathrooms and accommodation, and how do we make it less uncomfortable, because we still need to become comfortable, with our kiddos with disabilities.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. And we have a program here. I'm hoping that everybody listening to this who's local to me knows about we have a program. It's not the Miracle Field, and we don't have the flooring, but we do have a baseball program that has been hugely helpful, and beneficial for our disability community, but we don't have the flooring. So some people are not able to take
Yeah.
advantage of this great program we have. So you're making my wheels start turning
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. I mean, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be Miracle Field. I mean, the Miracle Field is a national organization, right? And the great thing about this affiliation is that at some point I'm going to send two kids to a national competition, not competition, but a national game. And they provided us with some great specs on how to build a field, and the best places to use, and the best things to use, and the cheapest ball, some of that
Mhm.
stuff, which has been nice, but to be able to connect. But it doesn't take a Miracle Field to start a revolution, right? Like, you don't have to have a soft surface. I mean, we played, the Dow Diamond has graciously opened up their field to us at the end of Inclusion Day every year, at the end of July. And it's
Mhm.
hard, we're on this, it's still a professional baseball diamond, but for some of our kids who do have a wheelchair, if they're
Yeah.
not powered, especially, it's hard. But
Mhm.
to play on Dow Diamond in Midland is one of the most precious things that these kids have ever done. And they are covered in red dust, and never have they ever been happier because they have it, right? But it doesn't have to be, that. And I mean, you can start small, whether it is a small field that maybe, it's not going to be perfect, but that's where you're going to start those
Yeah.
things.
And I have to ask, is Dow Diamond like Shea Stadium or something? Like, what is it? Is
It's
it like
a
a
it's
big
a,
stadium?
Major League Baseball. It's a double A, maybe a single A affiliate. So the guys that are in our league will end up going to the Dodgers, or play. That's their Dodgers farm league, essentially what it is. So every year they do lots of programming, and they are my number one partner, and they bring out their team to our field, and their mascot, who is Louie the Loon, who I have received, he came to our game last week, and he called me crying when he was done, because a friend of mine was in this mascot suit. It's 100 degrees inside. And he said that was the most rewarding experience I've ever had. And the parents sending the email saying that, oh my God, that makes
It's
my job the best
meaningful.
job.
It's meaningful. Yeah.
Yep.
Very meaningful to everyone. And
Really.
that's the best kind of bang for your buck, when you're putting all this work into something and it's affecting so many people. So thank you so much for doing this. And I've loved listening to you. I think you're an amazing person, and I want to come meet you and have coffee when I visit Iris.
Please do. Please do.
Marcy, before we kind of close this conversation, do you have anything else that you want to share, or that we didn't touch on that is important for this episode?
I would just say, at the end of all of this, next year I'm looking at 2 leagues. I'm looking at an adult league, and I'm looking at a youth league, because I'm going to have I'm going to guess 110 to 120 participants next year, which is huge. So I don't even begin to know how to accommodate that, with volunteers and that sort of thing. But I'm shocked at how many people have come, and it's not just from Midland. They're coming from 100 miles anyway. And so the draw is real, and the need is real. And I'm so happy to have created, I guess, this community through this park, through this thing. It's been so cathartic for myself and for my family to meet all of our athletes, and just to see how happy they are. And the other thing that's happening too is these kids are getting stronger physically. They're truly working on their skills. I mean, whether they're using a lacrosse stick to grab a ball or a banana scoop from when we were kids, it's amazing to see their actual physical skill that they've started to build on. So that, I mean, that goes without saying, it's going to happen. But when you start to see, I have a little buddy who's starting to walk now. He's getting out of his chair and he's trying to walk, and that's been great. But I'm just overwhelmed. And I just pushed a little bit harder for this little thing to happen. And this little thing is actually a really big thing. So it's been amazing. But yeah, I can't wait to see. If you build it, they will come. And I can't
I
wait
was
to
just
see
gonna
who
say, I
else
was just
comes.
gonna say, you probably heard it a million times. I didn't want to be corny, but I was like, we got to end this episode with, if they build it, they will come.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
So it's true. There needs to be a place for people to go before you can make these changes. So thank you so much. This has been really enlightening and inspiring. And I think everybody can, whether it's Miracle Field or anything else that's benefiting the lives of people who are often, on the
Forgotten side.
yes, on the sidelines. This is giving me a lot of ideas, going forward. So thank you so much for sharing your time.
No problem.
Marcy, thank you again for not only joining us today, but for your activism and your work in promoting inclusion and accessibility and making our community so much better. I really appreciate you.
Well, thanks for having me, ladies. I really appreciate it.
For more information, please go to www.twomomsnofluff.com. Thank you.
If you like this podcast, please subscribe and give it a 5-star rating so more people can hear it. Thank you.